Hey, 8th graders, it's Mrs. McDermott here. Mrs. Ryder and I are so proud of the work you're doing in this deep study of character unit. Last week, you read chapters 1 and 2, and you were looking at traits of the characters in the book, and there are kind of a lot of characters in this book. And Tuesday, you also worked on finding evidence, going back to the text and finding evidence from previous things that you have read, but also reading with kind of a critical eye, right? And looking for evidence in the text that points you to a certain characteristic or trait that a character in your book might have. So today, we're going to talk about something kind of interesting, and it really happens as you read more mature books and kind of books that are at your reading level and about topics and things that matter in the real world. So today you're going to learn that perceptive readers often realize that their characters are complex and they sometimes have characteristics that aren't very likable. So I want you to think about noticing the parts of characters that are less likable. So let me give you a couple of examples of ways that you can think deeply about the characters in your book and kind of the ways that you live your life. So you know people in your life, right? And you have friends and you have family members and you know the things that you like about them. But have you ever thought about their less likable sides? I'm sure you have. So I just wanted to show you Mrs. Ryder and I and our dreamy husbands. So you can see us here. We've done a number of things together as couples, and we've been married for quite a few years. And honestly, look at them. What's not to like, right? You see what I'm saying? Yeah. They're so funny and they're kind and they're smart and they're both great dads, and we all have a lot in common. And those are great traits to have in a husband, right? But sometimes they have traits that can be annoying to us. Like sometimes my husband Phil is kind of selfish, and he oftentimes will put golf in front of doing anything else for the family or with the family. And Mrs. Ryder's husband snores, and he can hold a grudge when he gets mad about someone. So because they're ours and they're our husbands, we can say that those things annoy us about them. And we talk sometimes about how our husbands annoy us. But if anybody else ever said a bad thing about them, we would defend them to the death and be super mad at the person who said something bad about them, right? Here's another example. This one might be a little bit more relatable to you. I have two sisters. And you can see us here at various stages in our lives. And we have played together since we were, children, right? I'm 6 years older than my youngest sister. And actually my middle sister lives just down the road, right? And so she's my best friend. And in fact, when I go through pictures of my life, I see pictures of her and I, and we're together almost all the time. She's one of my friends, but also a sister, obviously. They also have some characteristics that drive me nuts, and I'm sure that they'd say that I have some characteristics that drive them nuts, right? We've even been known to have a Christmas standoff. That's right. Sometimes when I think about it, the maddest I have ever been has been because of my sisters. But I'll tell you what, if either of them were having a hard time or if someone hurt them, I'd be there in a second, and I would never, ever tolerate anybody saying anything bad about them. So let's think about Ponyboy, our main character. We've been defending him. We have talked this week about a lot of things. He's sensitive. We found evidence in the text that he sometimes doesn't feel like he fits in with the rest of his group. We know he's smart. He likes movies and books, and that's very different from the rest of the greasers. I've been defending him because he got beat up and because he doesn't feel loved all the time by his brother, his older brother. I've been defending him because he's a greaser and I don't think he really likes it. But as I went back and looked at chapter 2 and as I was reading, I noticed that there were also some less likable traits of Ponyboy. First of all, he was kind of disrespectful sometimes. I saw him doing things with Dally and Johnny on their way to the movie that weren't something that I really thought was a good idea. They were kind of vandalizing stores, they were stealing things, and Ponyboy wasn't really standing up for what he believed. He was kind of going along with it. He also talked a lot about greasy girls and how they wore too much makeup and swore, and he didn't like them. Yet his friends, being greasers, were people he would defend to the death. He also seemed a little bit judgmental at times. He doesn't really like that his brother Soda dropped out of school. He's judging his brother Derry for being so hard on him all the time. And again, like I said, he's judging those girls. He seemed to really like Cherry and Marcia, but doesn't really give the other girls that live in his neighborhood the time of day. So he does have some less likable traits. So what I want you to know today as you're doing your reading work is that I want you to think deeply about characters and combine all 3 of the lessons that we've talked about so far together as you're reading. So today when you're reading chapter 3, you can jot about complicated characters. You can look for evidence that they have many traits and revise your thinking. And also keep your eye out for some traits in your characters that are less likable. Continue to make jots on your notebook page. And again, you can use Post-its or you can just take notes on your actual page. And today you don't need to set up a grid or anything. Just anytime a thought pops into your head about a character, or you notice a new trait or maybe a less likable trait, jot it down and remember your page number because we always need evidence for our thinking. You can, again, I'm just going to repeat, you can write down jots about any one of these things, okay? So you can jot down negative traits, character traits, and maybe some revision of your thinking. Like when we thought, is Ponyboy a loner or is he sensitive? And we really found more evidence to say that he was sensitive rather than being a loner, okay? So when you get done with chapter 3 and today's notes, you're going to snap a picture of your chapter 3 work, again looking for traits, evidence of revision of your thinking, and less likable characteristics. And then you're going to load it to your digital notebook in Schoology. All right, off you go.